Yeah, so yeah, I think exactly what you called out is right, which is that in 2022, Jackson Holliday was seen as a second round prospect coming into the cycle, and he had this meteoric rise through just massive developmental leap after a massive leap through the season, and ended up in the mix for 1-1. Pardon me, ended up getting taken there. Ethan Holliday and Jackson Holliday are not similar baseball players. Ethan Holliday has absolutely massive raw power. I mean, we're talking easy plus raw power. Um, Definitely like a bigger frame, a more physical frame. I think it's likely he plays shortstop for his high school team in Oklahoma. It's likely he doesn't end up at shortstop. It's more of like a third base profile for me. Um, there's a very patient, borderline, a little bit passive approach at the plate. And the question I think at the moment is there's some bat to ball slash contact questions, both overall contact rate and end zone contact rate. Um, what we should ground ourselves in, I think, is the fact that they are in very different places. Like we just referred to Jackson as like on the outside looking in when it was his draft year. Ethan Holiday started as number one on several draft boards. Um, and I think that both speaks to his caliber as a prospect, but also the fact that this top 10 is a mess. I would not enjoy picking in the top three this year because I just don't feel clear about how it's going to sort itself out. Right now, by consensus, and there is now a fairly well tuned up consensus board that's ready to drop after I read back through and edit it. He's the number 4 player by consensus in a top 10 that is increasingly dominated by high school players, which means that you might like it. Um, I think what we might end up seeing, and this is a guess, is a little bit of an overcorrection with Holiday, right? Where we say, oh, there's some contact questions, some bat to ball questions. Um, I would maybe make a bet that in a couple of months he's answered some of those, absolutely dominated his like high school competition in Oklahoma, and then we're talking about him as a top 2, in contention for 1-1. But his name's certainly in the mix. It's been in the mix since the beginning of the cycle, and he's absolutely the most famous prospect in this class on the prep side.
Okay. And then I'm going to ask you about the Texas A&M outfielder. You might have to fix my pronunciation here. Is it Laviolette?
Yep, you got it.
Jace Laviolette. So, outfielder, is it fair for me, because I know you love comps, right? Is it fair for me to put him in kind of like the Charlie Condon category of prospect here in his draft cycle?
um, That's an interesting comparison. And I'm gonna say, well, it depends exactly what you mean, and cut across me if I'm like misinterpreting what you're saying. But Condon kind of started out around 10 and then, hit like 30 home runs last season and just like flew and flew and flew up to the very top. Laviolette was the preseason consensus number 1 prospect in this class. Like when I always make a board of like 25, 30 consensus guys, like before the college season and the amateur season starts, just to see how things are looking. Laviolette was the number 1 guy. So in that way, they differ slightly, but certainly similar profiles, right? In terms of absolutely massive raw power, some questions about the hit tool. Condon answered his. Laviolette is not really answering his with his early season performance. So you mentioned, right, like absolutely massive frame guy, 6'5", like 225. Has been playing center field for Texas A&M the last 2 years. They got to the College World Series last year. Had a really great run, and he just put up numbers. Absolutely massive production. He's really struggled in the early going in 2024, and everything looks worse, Jeremy. Like this, his swing looks a little stiff. He's not moving as well. It doesn't look like he's the type of guy that's going to be able to stick in center field. There's a lot of swing and miss in zone in his game, and so if you put all of that together, you've got a power reliant corner outfield profile. Um, with an uncertain defensive home.
Which is Charlie Condon, right?
Which is Charlie Condon, but the difference being that Charlie Condon had an incandescent 2024 season, and Jace Laviolette has just not found it yet. And we're coming up on week 3 of conference play in the SEC, and he's just really running out of time. So just to make it as concrete as possible, he started the season as the consensus #1 prospect. He's all the way down to 7 already, with some folks ranking him all the way down to the back end of the first round at this point. And so I think when we see more outlets update their rankings, we're going to see him continue to take a tumble. And my guess would be like by the end of, if we revisit this conversation in a month, he'll probably be sitting somewhere in the 10 to 20 range as opposed to the top 10.